So our next speaker, directly to us, immediately from the shadow of Etna, is Ernesto De Cristofaro. He studied law in the University of Catania, philosophy at the University of Venice, and received a PhD in European citizenship, also from Catania. He's published many, many articles and a number of books on thinkers such as Foucault and Luhmann. He has also been a visiting researcher at the Max Planck Institute and at UC Berkeley, and he's currently a researcher in medieval and modern legal history at the Department of Law in the University of Catania. So, welcome, Ernesto.
Thank you very much.
Hope we won't have any espresso interruption.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the presentation. Also, let me thank also the organizers, and particularly I won't quote all of them. I'm sorry, I don't remember all the names, and but particularly Benedetta Carnaghi. And let me also apologize for the tone of my voice, which due to a cold, as you can hear, is particularly horrible today, even worse than my English, which is not easy. So, in the first decade following Italy's unification, the social question in the south appears to be a problem of military and legal order. The southern area, from Naples to Sicily, produces less than the half of the cotton that is produced in the industrial district of Torino, Genoa, Milano, and more or less 1 dime of iron and steel are treated in south industries in comparison with northern. But on the other side, there are riots, rebellions that cause thousands of victims. In 1862, Cesare Lombroso took part in the campaign of repression of brigandage in Calabria as an officer of the Italian Army Medical Corps. In 1863, he published a long article, 3 mesi in Calabria, 3 months in Calabria, on the journal Rivista Contemporanea. At the end of the century, the same work is published again in 1898 as a book. The title is now simply In Calabria. In the latter version, Lombroso analyzes the difficulties and the social backwardness of that region, also considering the relevance of the unequal distribution of land and of income in general. But in the first version, his attention is mostly directed to the biosomatic features of the population. According to an epistemological trend based on the connection and causal relationships between diseases of the body and behavior disorders, which will be further developed a few years later in 1876 by Lombroso in the book L'Uomo Delinquente, Criminal Man. In 1863, talking about the temperament of the inhabitants of Calabria, Lombroso states that the bad seed inherited from the Spanish domination, far more than the climate, had created hygienic habits and a tendency to laziness. Then the rich people nourished this tendency by hunting and lust, the poor by stealing and begging. Considering these biological and moral conditions, the remarkable diffusion of violence doesn't create any surprise. To kill someone by a stab, writes Lombroso, is an inconvenience of minor importance. In Calabria, almost everyone has a rifle or goes around carrying other weapons. The statistics of criminal matters confirm these descriptions. In 1865, in an article published on the Gazzetta Medica Italiana, it states that in all the regions of Italy and almost in every province there are towns and villages that have produced a continuous series of special criminals. For instance, in the town of Pergola, near Pistoia, Tuscany, the inhabitants have a traditional tendency on theft, which is, according to Lombroso, connected to a genetic mix between the local community and groups of gypsies. I would suspect, it's Lombroso's conclusion, that the race might be a component of criminality in these places. In Sicily, to add another example, Arabic and Semitic influences are the remote causes of local delinquency. Arabic blood, a cruel, rapacious, and untamed blood, says Lombroso, has its relevance in inspiring seditions and violence in the western part of the island, and for the same reason can be understood why similar facts are almost completely absent among other populations of Sicily, full of Aryan blood and much less intelligent, as those who live in the provinces of Catania and Messina. Lombroso thus indicates a systematic link between physical environment and biological roots and the transmission of pathological features, and identifies among southerners some typical antisocial or criminal attitudes. But it doesn't draw an opposition north versus south on this point, and he says that also in the northern part of the country, race and crime can be observed as closely related. At the end of the 19th century, around the years 1897, 1898, a Sicilian exponent of the positivistic school of criminology, Alfredo Niceforo, collects and deepens some elements of Lombroso's analysis. Niceforo was born in Castiglione in Sicilia, between Catania and Messina in 1876. His father was an important judge, the president of the Court of Appeals in Palermo, and he studied in Florence, Rome, and Naples. In Rome, he met Giuseppe Sergi, the founder of the Società Romana di Antropologia, Roman Society of Anthropology. In 1897, he receives his degree in law and published his first work, La Delinquenza in Sardegna, Delinquency in Sardinia. His teaching and research activities will prosecute across Europe during the first decade of the 20th century. Will be professor of criminal law, criminology, statistics in Lausanne, Brussels, Paris, Rome, Naples. Many of his works will be translated into German and French. In 1943, he will be one of the editors of the Dizionario di Criminologia, together with Eugenio Florian, another scholar of the positivistic anthropology, and Nicola Pende. This is quite important because Nicola Pende, in 1938, had been one of the drafters of the Manifesto della Razza, the ideological declaration of the Italian way to anti-Semitism. So Niceforo's horizon of activity and visibility is particularly important. During his research in Sardinia, made on behalf of the Società Romana di Antropologia and of the Società Geografica Italiana, he speculates about the existence of a zona delinquente, criminal zone in Sardinia, which would be the result of specific human and environmental reasons. From this moment on, the theme of the relationship between places and criminal tendencies will regularly come back in Niceforo's intellectual path, and on this base, two important books will be written by Niceforo: L'Italia Barbara Contemporanea in 1898 and Italiani del Nord e Italiani del Sud in 1901. In the first book, L'Italia Barbara Contemporanea, Contemporary Barbaric Italy, Niceforo describes the difference between North and South, saying that there is an abyss and that one should more honestly admit that there are two Italies instead of one. This abyss is caused by the different anthropological substrate between northern and southern Italians. The first are of Aryan origin, the second are Mediterranean. According to Giuseppe Sergi's books, Giuseppe Sergi was born in Messina and had been a professor of Niceforo in Rome, and both of them belong to the morally and biologically right part of Sicily, the eastern coast, following Lombroso's divisions. What matters is not the color of the hair, of the eyes, or of the skin, but the form of the cranium. All the other elements are exposed to variations, but the cranium remains stable across generations and generations, and it shows without any doubt the existence of two different ethnic stocks: Germanic in northern Italy, Latin in southern Italy. A northern Italian is, from a biological and somatic standpoint, much closer to a German or to a northern French, whereas a southern Italian is much closer to a Greek, a Spanish, or to a southern French. The feeling of social unity, of common organization, and of cohesion of the community is much more widespread among northern Italians. On the other side, among southern Italians, individualism and the struggle of all against all dominate. From a social standpoint, no comparison is possible between north and south. Although in the south there is a bigger amount of individual intelligence, but in conclusion, no social project or organization is possible in the south, states Niceforo. Southern Italians are, according to him, often rebellious, unruly, not educated. In the following dense book, around 600 pages, published in 1901, Italiani del Nord, Italiani del Sud, Niceforo develops the arguments already used in the previous work towards the moral and the legal sides. At the beginning of the book, he writes that southern Italians are, on average, inferior in height, head, circumference, height of the forehead, weight, appearance of the first menstruation. The southern Italians appear organically degenerate compared to the northern. This often is the result of bad nutrition. The Mezzogiorno race, writes Niceforo, shows a series of features connected to the worst quality of nutrition, but the relationship between wealth and physical development is mutual. This means that bad nutrition and poverty can be the cause of a less remarkable social development, but at the same time, bad nutrition and poverty are the result of an atavistic inferiority. Then physical inferiority of some Italians is the logical preamble of moral inferiority. Organic degeneration produces delay in moral development. Southern Italians have a psychology which is unsuitable to win the modern struggle on progress, declares Niceforo. Another indication concerning the attitude towards progress is the diffusion of culture and school education. Not in Italy there are less illiterates, more kindergartens, more schools, more libraries, more journals, and more artistic production. The civilization as a result of the sharing of culture, ideas, open debates in the public sphere is much stronger. Immorality and her daughter, criminality, depend on the different level of development. So northern and southern Italy have very different forms of delinquency. In the south, the crimes are most always primitive, violent, armed. In the north, the crimes are more subtle, artful, calculated. Hypocrisy, mask, fraud take the place of the knife. There is a civilized kind of criminality and an archaic one. These two kinds of delinquency coexist in modern society because different kinds of society, more archaic or developed, coexist. If we take, for instance, the homicide, which is the most typical violent crime, the number of victims of homicide is in Sicily and Sardinia 7 times the number of victims in northern Italy, and considering all the south 5 times. If we consider all the family of violent crimes, homicide, robbery, extortions, blackmails, injuries, their number is in the south 3 times the one of the same crimes in the north. The relevance of juvenile delinquency between north and south is almost equivalent. This circumstance can be explained by the fact that the larger diffusion of violence in the south is balanced by the earlier struggle for life in the north. Where social and economic progress arrives before, it brings also a tougher competition, and the consequence is that the competition overwhelms adolescents and youth and forces young people to jump into the fray very soon. Finally, to demonstrate the natural and mechanic character of delinquency, Niceforo underlines that the rate of repeat offenders in the south is between 2 and 3 times that in the north. Even the number of suicides militates in favor of the development gap between north and south. The barbarian people and inferior civilization are less exposed to conducts that are typical effects of the attrition of the nervous system and of the acceleration of life that concern more advanced people. Niceforo recalls that the savage races, refractory to progress, often behave in similar ways, and that, for example, an American statistics showed in the course of 1 year 9 suicides among the black population and 140 among white citizens. Mental insanity follows the same trend of suicide. It is a consequence of the overload and of the enormous excitement that civilization brings in people's life. Civilization, in its tumultuous progress, increases rapidly those 2 great forms of human shipwreck that are suicide and insanity. So Niceforo uses on one side the theory of anthropological evolution to demonstrate the adaptation of northern population to scientific and technological progress. On the other side, he uses the theory of the generation and of atavism, the shape of the cranium, the stature, the diseases, to underline the bad quality of the southern race, an evil race. Niceforo uses a set of parameters that he had already used in his previous works and his academic professor Giuseppe Sergi had used in his essay about the collapse of Latin nations, La decadenza delle nazioni latine, illiteracy, delinquency, industrial production, cultural production, that proved the existence of deep fractures of civilization within the Italian nation. But the lowest part of Italy, the most barbarian territory among all those that he observes, and totally insensitive for its remote island status to any possible improvement, is Sardinia, a place where children play at robbers, and honored families are those who have convicts or prisoners among their members. Such a place represents, in Niceforo's opinion, the lower peak of culture and development in Italy. These ideas are followed by other scholars in the first decade of the 20th century. In 1904, the Jewish physician and anthropologist Marco Levi Bianchini, for instance, writes an article to describe the superstitions of Calabrian race. Levi Bianchini's essays testified the existence of a very primitive way of living. For example, the peasants treat the snake bites or the excoriations with fire or with animal droppings. But in general, his vision is less pessimistic than Niceforo's. A scholar who strongly contests Niceforo's conclusion is Napoleone Colajanni. In 1898, as a reply to the book L'Italia Barbara Contemporanea by Niceforo, he publishes Per la razza maledetta, for the evil race. The theory of racial inferiority, historically already used towards African and Asian people, is, according to Colajanni, an instrument to legitimate that form of collective brigandage called colonial politics. There are 2 dangers in Niceforo's theories. One is that they lead a simplification on the social analysis whose last consequence might be the use of military repression and of mass imprisonment. In fact, if one considers that illiteracy and poverty, which in Colajanni's view are the most relevant factors of violence by need and by struggle for survival are instead not so important because the leading causes have to be seen in the shape of the crime, there will be space for no social therapy, but only for armed repression. A second, not less relevant danger is that Niceforo's theories are not isolated. On the contrary, they have gained a certification of quality given by one of the leading scholars of the positivistic school of anthropology, Enrico Ferri. Ferri puts its signature at the end of the preface of Niceforo's first book, La Delinquenza in Sardegna. And then in 1901, during one of his speeches in the House of Representatives, where he sits for many years as a deputy of Socialist Party, Ferri says, in northern Italy there are criminal cases, in southern Italy there are oases of honesty. So the works of Niceforo can be considered a part of a relevant intellectual movement. For sure, what we can now state is that Niceforo's theories operate a change of framing interest in social science. They bring the social question of the South, which was mainly a question of underdevelopment and lack of opportunities, into the field of the public order. They transform a social question into a criminal and legal question. Perhaps this path can be better observed by referring to the analysis that Michel Foucault made of some parts of Lombroso's work during his 1975 course at Collège de France, The Abnormal. During the lesson held on February 12, 1975, Foucault speaks about the construction of what he refers to as a psychiatric political discriminant of individuals and explains the social function of Lombroso's positions. In 19th century, after the big revolutionary wave of the years 70-71, a recurring question is addressed to psychiatry. Which are the groups, the people, the individuals, and the ideas that can be positively judged? In Italy, this problem comes out as a reflection of what occurs to some groups of the democratic side, originally inspired by Mazzini or by Garibaldi, that tend to radicalize their position in the direction of revolutionary socialism or of anarchy. Biological, anatomical, psychological, psychiatric science allows you to recognize what you can validate or disqualify in these political movements. The real revolution, always useful and noble, has to be distinguished from the useless riot and the chaotic rebellion. This differential data is also apparent from the physical aspects of the revolutionaries. Lombroso examines the police files concerning the militant of anarchic groups arrested in Torino, and he observes that almost none of them has the harmony and the beauty of Karl Marx or of Charlotte Corday. So that the movement that they represent, the ideas they carry on, are already disqualified from a biosomatic point of view. Niceforo's criminal anthropology operates as a biological discriminant towards the social and economic redemption requests that arise from the South, sometimes even through radical political modalities. It makes of a social problem a simple problem of public order and of public order keeping and of respect of the law. In the following decades, authors such Giustino Fortunato or Gaetano Salvemini will contribute, or Antonio Gramsci, of course, will contribute to give a sharper representation of southern Italy social backwardness and disease. But these attempts won't eliminate the recurring propensity of considering the South as a subject that is incurably alien from common progress and civilization. One of the last examples of this judgment can be found in the book by E.C. Banfield, The Moral Basis of a Backward Society in 1958.